Welcome to this explainer. Assuming you're already up to speed on the broader regulatory landscape from Module 1, today we are strictly focusing on Module 2, the CMC Strategy for Cell and Gene Therapies. We're going to dive right into the strategic funnel of translating your clinical intent into hardcore quality requirements. We'll map out the phase-appropriate approach and show you exactly how to build a bulletproof development plan. We're going to cover how to establish your quality target product profile, define your critical quality attributes, and, crucially, how to balance that need for speed with the necessary control in accelerated programs.
To do that, here is our roadmap for today. We'll be moving quickly through the target product profile, critical quality attributes, phase-appropriate control strategies, regulatory flexibility and rigor, and finally tying it all together with the integrated development plan.
All right, starting off at the very top of our strategic funnel with Section 1, the target product profile.
Okay, the absolute crucial point to understand here is that the TPP is your anchor. It is definitely not just a marketing brochure. It's a perspective, forward-looking summary of the exact quality characteristics your product absolutely must have to be safe and effective. You know, a lot of developers tend to treat this as just a checkbox exercise. But honestly, as your clinical and manufacturing understanding matures, this document has to evolve right alongside it. It anchors literally everything you do, from setting your specifications to designing your control strategy, all the way to planning for comparability across the product's entire lifecycle. It's your ultimate source of truth. If a specific attribute isn't tied back to this profile, you really have to stop and ask yourself why you're even measuring it in the first place.
Think about it this way. Your early clinical parameters have to be locked in before the detailed CMC planning even begins. For example, say your intended population is rare, severe, or pediatric. Well, that immediately dictates a completely different risk tolerance and urgency compared to other indications. Or take the route of administration. A direct tissue injection versus a standard IV infusion completely forces your hand on formulation and the types of administration controls you'll need. Your target dose? That's going to drive your batch and vial sizes, which then influences your potency assay range. And you absolutely must nail down the presentation early. If you're going cryopreserve rather than fresh, you've got to account for point-of-care handling. We're talking highly specific thaw protocols, wash steps, and tight administration windows right there at the clinical site, way before the very first patient is treated.
Now, looking at the sheer logistical differences between therapy types, there is a stark strategic contrast here. Autologous therapies demand this relentless, almost obsessive focus on rapid turnaround time. You have to define that acceptable vein-to-vein timeline super early because it dictates your entire scheduling, your rapid testing strategy, and basically every piece of site logistics. On the flip side, allogeneic therapies, those require meticulous scale-up and serious banking foresight. For those, you need to define your batch scale and dose per batch assumptions to drive your facilities design and your long-term banking strategy, which might span decades. For both approaches, these parameters completely dictate your analytical testing time budgets. If you suddenly decide to change your turnaround time or scale up your batch size late in the game, you are looking at massive downstream CMC consequences that can and will derail your entire timeline.
Let's move down to the next level of our funnel, Section 2, critical quality attributes. These critical quality attributes, or CQAs, are documented right in your target product profile, and they absolutely must tie directly to product performance relevant to safety and efficacy. Even if they're just provisional in the early stages, getting these down heavily focuses your analytical development and manufacturing control priorities. And they don't just exist randomly. They typically span 4 load-bearing pillars. You have to verify the product's identity, rigorously map its purity and impurity profiles, conclusively prove its biological potency, and of course, confirm absolute safety-related attributes. Basically, if an attribute doesn't fall into one of these 4 buckets or directly impact the clinical outcome, it probably isn't a critical quality attribute. I love this quote because it really hits the nail on the head. The core philosophy here is actually pretty simple. You don't need perfection on day 1, but you absolutely must demonstrate continuous, scientific evolution. When you're just starting out, your understanding might be pretty broad, and that's okay. But as your program matures toward commercial readiness, regulators fully expect your grasp of these CQAs to deepen significantly. And correspondingly, your specifications have to tighten up as your manufacturing consistency improves and your pool of clinical data grows.
Which brings us right into the how of it all with Section 3, phase-appropriate control strategies. This is basically a map of how wide, risk-justified early ranges are acceptable, provided they do actually tighten up progressively.
In the preclinical stage, you're really just establishing your early process and analytical understanding, maybe leaning heavily on existing platform knowledge. But the moment you reach that first-in-human stage, the whole game changes. You'll rely on risk-based interim specifications, sure, but you must ensure your core safety testing is solidly in place and validated. Then, by the time you hit those pivotal trials, you need to be doing serious comparability planning while maturing those specs and potency assays. Finally, at the commercial stage, the training wheels are totally off. You need full validation, tightened specifications, and a completely comprehensive, robust control strategy.
So, what does phase-appropriate flexibility actually mean in practice? Well, it's super tempting to view it as a free pass to just skip steps, right? But let's look at what regulators actually expect when you leverage prior or platform knowledge. For example, platform knowledge from a related product that uses the exact same AAV vector can absolutely inform your safety risk assessment. That's great. However, it absolutely does not give you a pass on generating product-specific potency or comparability data. You have to meticulously document the scientific rationale for any platform knowledge leverage explicitly, just to maintain total regulatory transparency.
That actually flows perfectly into Section 4, Navigating Regulatory Flexibility and Rigor. As of the production of the source materials for this explainer, the FDA has been developing specific CMC flexibility thinking for human cellular and gene therapy BLA development with their eyes set on 2026. This draft policy introduces some pretty incredible tools for streamlining development, particularly around phase-appropriate specification setting and making streamlined use of platform knowledge. But a massive word of caution here. Because this is fluid developing policy, you absolutely must verify the finalized current status of this guidance before betting your real-world submission on it. What works in a draft today might look incredibly different when it's codified tomorrow. Time for a little tough love for developers out there. Regulatory flexibility is an allowance to be agile. It is definitely not an excuse for sloppy science, and it absolutely doesn't let you bypass mandatory GMP compliance. Every single flexible approach you take still requires documented, rock-solid scientific justification and a rigorous risk assessment. Strict GMP compliance, incredibly deep product understanding, and relentless risk control, those remain absolutely mandatory, regardless of whatever flexibility framework you happen to be operating under. Regulators expect you to explicitly demonstrate, not just assert, but actually demonstrate that your agile approach is scientifically justified. Finally, let's pinpoint the who and when by integrating all these moving parts in Section 5, the Integrated Development Plan. Think of this as the master engine of your program. It coordinates all your subplans against a realistic clinical timeline, ensuring that dependencies across work streams are mapped out crystal clear. It's like interconnected gears in a highly complex machine. Your analytical development plan ensures your methods mature exactly when they need to. Meanwhile, your potency assurance plan is building a multifaceted, life cycle approach to assuring biological activity. At the same time, your comparability and change management strategy is anticipating likely future changes and predefining exactly how you'll evaluate them. If one gear slips, the whole shebang stalls. This integrated plan becomes your single, undeniable source of truth for all CMC governance and resourcing decisions. And powering that engine is your CMC risk register. This is the structural integrity check of your facility. It has to be a living record. Please do not just write this once at your kickoff meeting, stuff it in a drawer, and forget about it. It has to comprehensively cover everything from starting materials to manufacturing, analytics, and regulatory risks, all in one centralized place. Why? Because by continuously tracking risk owners, mitigations, and status over time, it forces you to prioritize your incredibly scarce resources, like your time and your capital, directly against your highest threats. It must be rigorously reviewed and updated as risks are resolved, as they escalate, or as entirely new unforeseen risks pop up from the data. A huge part of that risk management is dealing with long lead items. You must identify and resource these items early, because in cell and gene therapy, critical path slippage cascades so fast into massive clinical delays. We've all seen programs completely stall out right here. Generating cell banks, developing reference standards, and maturing your potency assays, these are the classic long lead traps that catch developers completely off guard. Plus, your facility strategy, whether you're leaning on a CDMO or an academic hospital-based site, sits directly on the critical path for pivotal and commercial readiness. Technology transfer timelines are unforgiving. You have virtually zero scheduling flexibility here, meaning early aggressive planning is absolutely vital. So, by anchoring tightly to your target product profile, deploying phase-appropriate rigor, maintaining strict scientific justification, and managing a living integrated risk register,
You ensure your therapy can actually survive the brutal journey from concept to commercial reality. A strategy that's merely built to start will inevitably stall out the second regulators ask you to tighten your specifications. But a strategy built to scale, that one will adapt, mature, and successfully reach the patients waiting for it. So here's the million-dollar question you have to ask your team tomorrow. Which one are we building? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope this helps you build a much more robust CMC roadmap.